Greetings and salutations, East Africa and wherever else you're joining us from. It is a Friday, one that we have set aside to mark the World Children's Day, which is celebrated tomorrow, the 20th of November, every year. Now, this day is set aside to promote and improve awareness on the welfare of children. And actually, World Children's Day also marks the anniversary of the date that the UN General Assembly adopted both the Declaration and the Convention on Children's Rights. Speaking of which, today we shall be looking at one of those rights that calls for every child to grow up in a family setup and in an atmosphere of happiness, love, and understanding. Fact is, not all children enjoy this right, and this morning we speak to stakeholders in this space who are determined to change this reality. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this is Your World. Dramatic return of 3 terror convicts to the Committee Maximum Security Prison.
Now that we have gotten them and we have officers we suspect failed in their duty to do this, we will ensure that the law takes its course and we bring all those who are involved to justice.
Prison's boss commandant in police custody on allegations of aiding terror convicts escape. Elsewhere, U.S. dedicates $1.2 billion to protect marine life and oceans. And further afield, Egyptians check the damage of their homes after unprecedented bad weather hit the southern Egyptian city of Aswan. Thank you again for joining us on this broadcast. As I mentioned today, we are dedicating the program to actually celebrate the children ahead of tomorrow's World Children's Day. And today we'll be talking about alternative care, and you'll be finding out what exactly that means in this broadcast. But before we get to it, let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19 around the world. And I'm talking about the statistics this far. And this morning, those numbers stand at 256,328,092 confirmed cases. Out of that number, 231,534,499 have recovered, and unfortunately, we have lost 5,146,754 people to COVID-19 globally. In the country, well, the numbers stand at 254,541 confirmed cases, 247,817 have recovered, and unfortunately, 5,325 people have succumbed to COVID-19 in the confines of Kenya. To some of those stories making headlines this Friday, Egyptians check the damage of their homes after unprecedented bad weather hit the southern Egyptian city of Aswan, situated along the Nile River, which killed 4, injured dozens, and flashed out scorpions with a deadly sting. Mahmoud Mahmoud, a factory worker, says there are many things buried under the mud, such as my bed, my air conditioning, and here's where scorpions beat the workers while they were trying to flee from the heavy rains. Some people were bitten by scorpions and our colleagues took them to the hospital. Mohammed Hussein, the Benban village mayor, adds that the floods come from the mountainous area of the western desert to the village, which is the lowest area here, destroying the houses as all of them were built out of mud. The rain crushed the houses and flattened them. Nearly 60 houses were destroyed.
بيتي وقعت الحيطة تردت من النظرة والحال.
القرية الوحدة المحلية كان متواجد برضه مع من
هناك كده برضه الدمار ده.
Elsewhere, archaeologists in Morocco unveil what they say is the oldest jewelry in the world, perforated seashells dating back as much as 150,000 years. The shells, assumed to have formed necklaces and bracelets, were discovered in the Bizmoun cave near the coastal resort of Izura. Now, according to researchers, they were dated to be around 142,000 to 150,000 years old. One of the researchers notes that this discovery has enormous implications for the history of humanity, that is suggesting that the owner was using language. So this raises the question, does this discovery imply the existence of a language used to communicate?
That it suggested the owner was using language. So this raises the question, does this discovery imply the existence of a language used to communicate between these groups or with the members of other groups?
Sudanese anti-coup protesters blocked roads with piles of bricks as clashes hit the streets of Sudan's capital in the bloodiest day since the military's October 25th takeover. Now, police fired tear gas to disperse dozens of anti-coup protesters who had stayed on the streets of North Khartoum overnight, braving an intensifying crackdown that has drawn international condemnation. Police tore down makeshift barricades the protesters had erected the previous day. Now, Top General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Sudan's de facto leader since the April 2019 ouster of longtime President Omar al-Bashir, detained the civilian leadership and declared a state of emergency on October 25th. Now, the move upended Sudan's fragile transition to full civilian rule, drawing international condemnation and a flurry of punitive measures and aid cuts. In Kenya, we are not yet out of the woods. That is the resound warning from Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, who was among senior government officials who witnessed the dramatic return of 3 terror convicts to the Committee Maximum Security Prison. The 3 most wanted criminals were arrested along the Mwingi-Tana River border while fleeing to Garissa. Seth Olale reports that the Ministry of Interior is announcing a security system overhaul in the country's top correction facility.
The police helicopter carrying the country's most wanted fugitives landed at the Committee Maximum Security Prison at 4:15 p.m., marking the end of dramatic 4-day manhunt. Prison officers had a hard time controlling the masses as the 3 disembarked in the hands of heavily guarded anti-terror police. First to disembark was Joseph Juma Odhiambo, aka Yusuf, followed by Musharraf Abdallah Akalunga, alias Zakarawi, and lastly Mohammed Ali Abikar. The 3 were soon whisked through the main entrance of the maximum prison, where they had staged a daring breakout only 72 hours ago. On hand to witness the culmination of an operation that began in the outskirts of Kitui County were Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, his ICT counterpart Joe Musheru, Director of Criminal Investigations George Kinoti, and the newly sworn-in Prisons Commissioner, retired Brigadier John Kibaso Warioba.
I pray to God that we never get here as a country, because the level of anxiety the country got into was unnecessary because of the lapses that were here. But now that we have gotten them, and we have officers we suspect failed in their duty to do this, we will ensure that the law takes its course and we bring all those who are involved to justice. The mistakes that were committed here on Monday are unforgivable. I mean, it was a very frightening, horrific actually, to say the truth, the dereliction of duty on the part of some of us. And then we have had a meeting with our officers. You know what His Excellency the President did yesterday in ensuring the changes were done.
3 terror convicts who escaped from the maximum prison on Monday, 1 a.m., were arrested in Endau, Kitui East, in Kitui along the Kitui-Tana River County border, while coastbound.
Our assessment, these people were moving towards Garissa and maybe finally to cross to Somalia.
The 3 convicts were serving terrorism-related sentences ranging from 48 to 60 years imprisonment. So far, 9 senior officers, including Committee Prison Commandant Charles Mutembei, have been charged in connection with the daring Monday prison break. There's a seeming joyful mood among Committee Maximum Prison officers following the rearrest of the 3 terror convicts. Now, the situation is still tense, especially in line with the command chain, following the announcement by Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i of a complete system overhaul in order to ensure safety and security for both officers and the inmates. Seth Olale, NTV, at the Committee Maximum Security Prison in Kiambu County.
Meanwhile, 6 Committee Maximum Security Prison warders, including prison's boss commandant Charles Mutembei and his deputy Joseph Longorianyang, will remain in police custody until Monday, when the court will give a ruling on whether they will be detained for a further 30 days to pave way for investigation. The 6 who were arraigned at the Kahawa Law Courts were charged with aiding the 3 terror convicts to escape the Committee Maximum Security Prison premises. They appeared before Senior Principal Magistrate Boaz Ombewe and represented by lawyers Danstan Omari and Cliff Ombeta. They claimed that the suspects were being charged with criminal negligence and not terror, hence should be heard either at Milimani or Kiambi Law Courts, not at Kahawa, where they were being arraigned. Mutembei and his deputy were accused of ensuring that the condemned Block A, where the terror convicts were being held, was in good condition to prevent their escape, while the other wardens, who were in charge of manning the CCTV at the prison, were charged for failing to notice the activities of the convicts who escaped, even though the crucial points are properly covered by CCTV cameras.
Jurisdiction on criminal aspects, anti-terrorism. Under the Act of Anti-Terrorism. Specialized magistrates are gazetted specifically to hear such matters.
There is nothing in the Gazette notice that stipulates the category of cases this court should handle. I am aware the offense being investigated occurred within committee prison, and the ordinary place of trial is this court. Having no specific provision of the law barring this court from entertaining this matter, I find no reason to rule in favor of the respondents. I would like to point out
Environmental factors now, and cleaner oceans free from plastic pollution is a desire of not only world governments but many who live off the seas and depend on marine life to sustain their economies. Following the Glasgow agreements last week, the United Nations Environmental Agency UNEP is seeking global powerhouses to not only commit to reducing emission of methane into the air, but also take the issue of plastic solutions seriously with innovative practice that can earn for those engaging in it while protecting the globe. Leila Mohammed reports.
I'm therefore so pleased to acknowledge here the presence of the remarkable Kenyan entrepreneurs that are proof that action is already underway, and our host country, Kenya, continues to lean in on the transition to clean energy by 2030, on geothermal, on wind power, on household solar, on a successful ban on single-use plastic bags.
We add between 8 and 14 million tons of plastic pollution to the ocean every single year. That's about 1 truckload dumped in the sea every minute of every day. And that rate is increasing, not decreasing. Plastic can take anywhere from decades to millions of years to break down. When we eat seafood, we're not only consuming microplastics, but toxins as well.
Governments say that if the attitudes of people don't change soon, then even...
Well, let's focus on the conversation of the day. Remember, I mentioned that tomorrow is a World Children's Day, and this is marked every year on the 20th of November. And this day is actually set aside to promote and improve awareness on the welfare of children. And today we are talking about something that will go a long way in improving the same. And to help me along with this conversation, I'm joined in studio by Boniface Buluma, who is an alternative family care and child protection manager at the Tree of Life Kenya. Thank you for your time. Also joined by Gladys Wanjikonjeri, who is a foster mom. Thank you for coming through. And Peter Kamau, who is an executive director at the Child in Family Focus. Thank you for your time. And to start us off, the child protection system is a turning point globally, as they say, and it's shifting to ensure that the welfare of children, as I mentioned, is actually protected. Let's start with the fact, what is informing this Boniface? Why is there a sudden shift to how we care for our children?
There is a shift to how we are caring for our children due to also years of research that have been done, not only in Kenya, but in different parts of the world, that somehow indicate that there is a heavy reliance on institutional care of children, especially vulnerable children who find themselves outside the parental family environment. And what the research results are showing is that most of the children who have been raised within institutional care are experiencing challenges in terms of their development, socially, emotionally, and even their brain development. Therefore, this has raised a lot of concerns. Other studies show children who have grown and become adults out of institutional care. We have statistics that indicate that some of them end up as being homeless, others being involved in issues of crime, others in prostitution, as well as even going to extremes of committing suicide. Therefore, different actors in this sector started looking at what could be done differently, what could we change in our way of doing things to ensure that we are able to safeguard the interests of our children. As a result, reflections have been around the family, have been around the community, simply because the family is able to give a child a sense of identity. They are able to get some sense of belonging. We are talking about children being able to get individualized kind of attention. On the other side, when you look at it from a cost perspective, we are able to establish that institutional care is very expensive compared to taking care of a child within a family and a community setup. Therefore, these different factors have made actors globally to be able to reconsider, even at the level of UN. In 2010, guidelines eventually were developed of focusing on alternative care, and in Kenya we were able to domesticate the same in 2014. This has eventually activated a mechanism within the country whereby all of us are actively involved in the dialogue to see how can we eventually now move to implementation of these different options of care.
Okay, so Boniface, you talk about institutions. Define these institutions that have been the norm, so to speak.
When we talk about institutions, here we are talking about, we have charitable children institutions in the country that are somehow established either by faith-based organizations or individuals as well as corporates. We have statutory institutions as well that are established by government to address issues of children in conflict with the law. Therefore, these kind of institutions, yes, they serve a purpose. However, it has been proven that when children stay in this institution for a long duration of time, then the negative effects eventually are felt. When we talk about family-based care, here we are referring to a child being placed either for a short or long term within a family environment whereby there is at least one caregiver that is able to offer a nurturing environment and support to a child within a family and a community. Yes.
Okay, so Peter, the Kenyan government, I understand, is in tow with the changes and is working with various partners to implement alternative care, as Boniface put across. What are the pillars of this care form agenda, at least for us as a country?
Thank you, Gladys. We have the first pillar being the prevention pillar. Imagine with me a house with a leaking roof. We have options. Do we get buckets and mops to keep collecting the water every time it is raining, or do we seal that roof and prevent it? So the prevention piece is very, very important. And that entails intervening at the family level and putting in some safety nets so that children don't have to fall in the institutional care system or in children's homes. And that entails, is a child in need of education? Can that education support be taken to the child in the community? Are the parents struggling with alcoholism issues? Intervene by supporting them deal with that problem. Is poverty a driving factor for children to end up in children's homes? Then how do we address the poverty? So that is one of the pillars. The second pillar now is the alternative care pillar. And mostly we think of it for mostly children that require to be connected to family because they have already left that system of family care. And so if, for instance, we are thinking of abandoned babies, what about adoption options for them? For children that are in children's homes because the families are abusive or they have experienced neglect, what about considering foster care? But also not forgetting the very moral fabric of society, which is the kinship ties. What about the uncle and the auntie and the grandmother caring for this child? So that really is the alternative care pillar. But then the final one is the transitioning piece. For children that have already left the family system and have ended up in children's homes, what about journeying alongside the children's homes to show them the different way they could actually make family care a reality for children? And so it means tracing family. It means connecting these children to carers, as well as also helping them improve the care that they're giving to these children. Yeah, and truth be told, a lot of these institutions do the best they can because they may not know what the options are. And so guiding them in that journey of transitioning their model of care to family care is the third piece, which is the piece concerning transitions.
I see. Now, Boniface, before we get to hear from the foster parent amongst us, perhaps we can delve further into the definition of these alternative forms of care. Let's start off with foster care. What does that entail exactly?
When we talk about foster care, we are talking about placing a child with a person who is not a relative of this child, who is not a parent of this child, but this person is willing to undertake the care of this child. So, and normally foster care is normally a short-term kind of an arrangement. Normally when it is, a certificate is issued, lasts for 12 months, but it is renewable at least twice, so that on a maximum, the foster care arrangement will last approximately for 3 years. That is according to Kenyan law.
I came across guardianship. What is this and how does it apply?
Guardianship relates to, it mostly goes through even court, whereby someone can easily be appointed a guardian either through a deed done by the parent of the child or through an order given by court for purposes of protecting the interests of the child. Mostly you realize that it normally happens mostly when the child, when the parent of the child, for instance, dies unfortunately, and therefore a parent wants to protect the interests of the child even in his absence. It can also happen even if one parent is gone but there's another parent, so a guardian is somehow appointed to be able to do co-parenting on this child.
So
however,
the guardian does not have to be from that family?
The guardian does not have to be from that family. Yes.
Okay, when we talk about adoption, remind us how this works and what the intricacies are. Perhaps Peter, you can take this one.
On adoptions, we have registered adoption societies in this country. And for any person that is desiring to adopt a child, you have to first start by walking into an adoption agency to get informed about the process and the intricacies of the same. But most important is that the law is very clear. You have to be under 65 years and over 25 to adopt. Number two, you have to have a good criminal history and not having any criminal records. Number three, you have to have a marriage certificate if at all you're in a marriage relationship, and the likes. And so the adoption agency will guide you in that process. But as alluded earlier, a lot of children that qualify for this process would be those that have no known relatives. But also we have children in kinship settings where a relative desires to adopt a nephew and the like. So relative adoptions are equally allowed. But we find that the big chunk of children that end up in adoptive settings are those that are abandoned with no known relatives at all. And the police have to actually prove for cases of abandoned children that they have made efforts to try and trace the family with no success. Yes.
Okay, so let's understand foster care in Kenya, which is what we're focusing on today. And Gladys, you are a foster parent.
Yes.
When did this journey begin?
It began last year. That's the year 2020, month of May, when I came across 3 girls in Korogocho slums in my line of duty. When we were doing the voluntary work, you remember when last year we had a very tough time when COVID hit our country, and so the social gatherings were banned, but we had to deliver donated food to homesteads. So we volunteered our services to go home to home in the slum, and that is how I came across the 3 girls that now I'm fostering, and we found them in great need because they don't have a mother, they stay with their father. And the same father was sexually molesting the big girl who is 8 years. They are 8 years, 5 years, and 3 years. So when we learned about what the father is doing to the 8 years girl, then we took the girl to the hospital for medical proof that that is what has been happening. When we got the medical report, we took it to the police. So the police now got the man and arrested him. And the girls remained homeless. And it is in the slum. So there is no way we would have left those girls vulnerable like that and homeless like that. So that's how the girls ended up in my home. And I can say so far it is almost 1.5 years with the girls, and I'm a happy foster parent.
Okay.
Yes.
So Boniface, it can be as easy as that.
You can imagine.
Okay, tell us more, tell us more. So what's behind the scenes that perhaps we need to understand about this process?
Okay, in an ideal setup, we will say that someone who is interested to foster a child has to go to the nearest sub-county children office. Simply because in every county in this country, or every sub-county, there is a sub-county children officer, whereby you'll be able to get an application form so that you clearly indicate your interest of wanting to become a foster parent. The sub-county children officer will take you through what it entails being a foster parent, and therefore at the end of it all an assessment is going to be done. An assessment that is done even involving a visit to your family, to your home, to be able to understand the environment of your family. After this step of assessment, we move towards a training, simply because a person who becomes a foster parent eventually has to be prepared to get to know that in foster care, you don't choose the kind of child that you are going to be placed with, but you need to be prepared to know that children come into foster care with a lot of baggage, with a lot of weight, because some of them have gone through difficult circumstances, and therefore they are either some of them traumatized and need some special way of also handling them. So you are trained on what are the legal framework that underpins foster care, At the same time, you are trained on the special needs that these children come with. But more so, we also want to understand what is your motivation? What drives you to want to offer this opportunity to a child? After this training, then you are going to be registered as the children, because there is a register at the sub-county children's officer's desk. On the other end, there is a child that is being identified, because a child who qualifies for foster care, for instance, the way Peter has said, you can either be an orphan, you can be an abandoned child, you can be a neglected child. For instance, even the children who are found in the streets qualify to be placed under foster care. Once they've been identified, a detailed assessment is done about these children to identify what are their real needs. Because not all children are supposed to be placed under foster care. Foster care is supposed to be like, you've been able to establish that it is the most suitable care option that will be able to adequately address the needs that have been identified for this child. After which, matching is done. So here you have a pool of foster parents that you've been able to recruit. On the other side, you have children who need to be placed. A matching is done where capacity of the foster parent is looked at and the needs of the child are looked at. Where we find a perfect fit, or sometimes it's not perfect, but where we see that the foster parent or family can adequately address the needs of the child, then they are placed together. A preparation process they're taken through a preparation process. A bonding, like an introductory session is also organized. A child visits the family maybe for a weekend, then goes back. You assess how has it gone. All that bonding means a lot to understand how the child is compatible within this new environment. However, just as Gladys puts it, it is a fulfilling experience and not so complicated.
So clearly for Gladys, this was a crash course. Your heart chose the children, then you were able to get into the system. So what did they do to ensure that they were placing these children in the right hands?
The children's office?
Yes.
The children's office, immediately when we got these girls from Korogocho slums, we went to the police, and from there we had to go to the chief, who connected us to the children's officer volunteer in the slum. And then the children's officer volunteer connected us to the children's office in Kasarani. And that is where now we started the journey of the foster parenting processing. So you go there and they have to take a lot of information from you, get to know your background, even get to visit your home. Just see generally how are you staying with the girls, understand whether the girls or any kid, not just the girls, any child is okay in that home. Like for me, they visited our home not once but severally. They have to assess where the children are sleeping, where do they eat, how do they live, is it a conducive environment for them, are they peaceful, are you the right person for them, because they even observe the body language when they are just around. And then once they are satisfied that you are the right person to be with these children, they help you now start processing the foster parenting certificates for the girls, for the kids.
Tell me this. You told me you're a single mom.
Yes, I am.
Was that a concern for them?
No.
Not at all?
It wasn't, because foster parenting has to start with you as an individual. Because I have come across so many married women who admire me. And they tell me, Gladys, if you were married, maybe you would not be able to do what you're doing because there's another decision maker. But they tell me, because you are the final decision maker in your home, you are able to take in the girls. So there are those who are married, but they're not able to foster parent because of some reasons. So I don't think being a single mother can stop anyone to foster a child. And even I would speak to single mothers who are out there. I want to tell my fellow single mothers, being a single mother, you are complete, you are whole, you are empowered. You can take care of your own and another one. Yes.
All right. Yes. Now, very nice. I see the gentlemen are all smiling. Let me start with them.
Okay. But just to clarify that under foster care, yes, it allows a single parent to be able to foster. However, if you're a single mother, you can only be able to foster girls.
Sure.
If you're a single father, you can only be able to foster boys. You cannot be able to foster a child of the opposite gender.
I see.
Yes.
Now, Peter, the reason why I raise this is because when it comes to the adoption process, I know this is a very intricate process, and single parents at times are scrutinized more than the married ones, right?
Thank you for that question again. First and foremost, there are special circumstances for singles. And just like Okada has said, ladies can get girl children only, and gentlemen, boys. It's very rare to find gentlemen coming forward to adopt singly. But the special circumstances are such that if you are a single lady and you want to adopt a boy child, then one of the circumstances that is considered is that you already have another child that is a male. And so likewise also for the gentleman, if he wants a girl, then does he have a daughter? But also it's very important to think of the support system surrounding the child, whereby relatives, aunties and uncles, grandmothers are really needed to be part of that child's life. But also to mention, Gladys, is that adoption is a legal process. It is only processed by the high courts, not even the magistrate courts. The government of Kenya has got a mandate and a role to actually equally assess the family, normally when the process is at the court level. The adoption process starts with the adoption agency, and the adoption agency will work with children's homes to identify children that are free for adoption, and then you are required to have the child under your care for 3 months before you could start the court process. And once the process for court kicks in, the government is called upon, actually ordered by the court, to also check your suitability. So scrutiny is very important because at the end of the day, you're looking at the child's interests and ensuring that you're safeguarding their welfare even long after the adoption process is completed.
And does this also apply for kingship? Because, I mean, if you are placing a child, you also have to think about the extended family and who is in it, right?
When you're talking about kinship, you realize in Kenya, mostly kinship is done informally. Kinship is whereby you are able to take care of the child of your brother, of your sister, or an uncle taking care of a relative. That is kinship care. And we believe it is widely spread in the country. Mostly it is done informally. I think recently the government is trying to also insist or to find ways on how we can have a formalization of this process, not only to safeguard the interests of the children within this kind of an arrangement, but also it facilitates linking this kind of families with government services. Because as we know, we even have cash transfer programs being promoted by the Kenyan government, and therefore it is important from where we've heard from government that such arrangements are also formalized. Formalized implies at least going to the nearest chief, going to the children office and just indicating, hey, I am taking care of my brother's son, I'm taking care of my brother's sister, daughter or something of the sort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you know, we speak of this and it feels like very removed for those that have never come across this kind of arrangement. But right here in studio, Peter, you're actually a recipient of care institution, having lived in an orphanage most of your life. When you think back to that experience, why is family-based care more important and critical compared to institutions?
Thank you. I spent my entire childhood in a children's home together with my siblings. And for a start, after losing my parents when I was really young, we initially were separated and taken to 3 different children's homes because 6 children were hard to find a place in a children's home. And at that time, there was no one to tell my uncles and aunties that it is actually possible that these children can be retained in the family. And so we were separated for 2 years, but eventually, by God's grace, we ended up in one facility where we were all reunited 2 years later. But then my memories of growing up in a children's home is seeing children who actually I was close to, my friends, John, getting placed in a family, either in foster care or in adoption. And that used to really trouble me, and I waited for the day my day would come. Interestingly, when there were visitors walking into the children's home or orphanage, as well as volunteers, I always used to be at my best behavior. For what reason? So that I could be loved and taken away to be a part of a family. And it's because I saw how those children bonded with the prospective adoptive moms as well as the prospective foster mothers when they came before eventually being allowed to take them away to be part of their family. And so what I know in hindsight and in retrospect is that a lot of benefits come with family. Things as basic as, you know, a mother singing a lullaby to a child is not something to take for granted. Because in the children's home you find, though they are trying the best they can, it is realistically not possible to actually give them what a family provides. And that's why in children's homes you'll find babies as young as 4 months or 6 months sort of knocking their heads in their baby cots when it's time to sleep. And it is because that is the only thing that comes close to a lullaby for them. They were so accustomed to crying and not being picked up for attention or for a diaper change because the numbers are so many. The caregivers are always so few. And so, to me, in hindsight, as well as currently with my experience raising up my own son, I loved singing a lullaby for him every night. And he loved that lullaby. And that is something that I know many children in homes crave. You can walk into a children's home today, abandoned baby unit with 20, 30 infants, and the place is dead silent. Why is that the case? Yet children are supposed to be noisy. They're supposed to be crying for attention. But it is all because they develop toxic stress. And as a result, no longer cry when in need of any attention. And the rule of thumb is, according to UNICEF, for every 3 months, a child under the age of 3 years is in such facilities, they lose a month of development. So you can see what family does in trying to mitigate the developmental loss and damage on these children. Yeah, that in a nutshell really is the benefits of family versus this kind of care. We were 30 children under the care of 2 house mothers that worked in shifts. So one is there during the day, she goes away in the evening, another one comes in. But you know, Gladys, in your own home setting, you do not have a shift. You are there, you know, all the time. And even if you come to work, you know, the child knows mama is coming home today. So I can go on and on.
I hear
Yes,
you. I hear you.
But yeah.
Now, Boniface, just looking at his circumstance, 6 kids, was that probably the reason why placement was a bit hard? Because there is always that rule of thumb that don't separate the children, especially the siblings, keep them together. Is that something that works against maybe those from bigger families?
For sure. For instance, under foster care, for instance, the maximum you can have is 6 children, including your own children. So it can be a bit tricky placing 6 children, all of them together in one family, because at the same time you also try to avoid separating siblings. Therefore, but we also have families that, because for instance you might find yourself in a situation that you meet a family that has already fully grown children, and therefore they are adults already, but they have space and they are willing to foster, or they are willing to offer the space of their family. In such a case, you can be able to place the 6 children.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to Gladys. You have a daughter of your own, and now 3 that you added into the family.
Yes.
How has this experience been?
My experience has not been so difficult, because when I think of my daughter, I had created a lifestyle. Though she's alone, she has been brought alone for 14 years. Now she's 15. She has been all alone in that house. But I had created an environment for her to learn sharing. I remember anytime I would come back home in the evening, anything that I come with, be it a biscuit, be it anything, I would let her eat and share with our house manager. I would let her always share. Anytime I'm going to the slum, I'm so involved in the slum, I would go with her. Actually, when we met these girls, we were doing voluntary work with her in the slum. So when we met them, we saw the situation they are living in. We saw they are living just outside the sewage. We saw how they are in tattered clothes. We saw how they are hungry. My daughter was there with me. And every time we would go back home, she would always ask me, Mommy, what can we do for those kids? Mommy, what can we do for those kids? And the day I brought those girls home, my daughter was the happiest. And she was like, Mommy, finally, these girls have found help. So they stayed in our home. They found a big sister who welcomed them. So when you have a system at home that is already prepared and open, they're used to the life of being kind and generous. It becomes easy. And also for me, I think I just bonded with the girls and I loved them, because foster parenting I would advise people to do foster parenting, not just because you're financially able or in a position. Let you be driven by love. Because I have come to realize the most important thing these kids are looking for, like what my colleague Peter has said, is love. That is the paramount thing that they are looking for. And for me, the reason why I settled and I said these girls are not going to a children's home is because they were craving for a mother's love. These 3 girls, the 8 years who was the wife to the father, was also a mother to the 2. To a point, these 2, the second born and the third born, were calling these 8 years Mama. So when they came to my house, I was shocked to hear them say, Mama, Mama, do this for me, Mama. And when I look, they are calling their sister Mama. Because they have been abandoned by their mother, whom we don't know where she is.
Oh, so she's alive?
We don't know.
Oh,
we don't know. We don't know anything about her. So these 2 small ones are craving for a mother. So they call the big one Mom. When they came to my house, within the second day, this big one had already approached me. And she came very timidly. And she asked me, Mama Abi, are you only mom to Abi? Or can you also be my mom? Because this 8 years doesn't have somebody to call mom. At least these 2 can call the 8 years mom. And you know, I felt tears. And what can you answer that child? You just tell her, it's okay, you can call me mom. And today, if you come to my house, they all call me mom. The joy of them having a mother's love is out of this world. It is irrepressible. Like Peter has said, something as small as singing a lullaby, something as small as they hurt, even a mosquito bites them, and they come and say, Mommy, look at this. And you tell them, oh, sorry, it will be fine. That means the world to these kids. So I would want to urge people, foster parenting, it comes with a lot of love. Give them love. That is what they need. And I'm telling you, anytime I'm with these girls, they spoil me. They are now the ones loving me back. Because now they have found the love they were looking for. They are always around me. They are always hugging me. They are always holding to me. Sometimes they refuse to sleep in their bedroom and they come and sleep in my bed, all of them. And at night, we sleep holding each other. And that one means the world to them.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You've made us balanced ears, and we really celebrate you for taking this up with such an open heart.
Thank you.
And I'm just curious to understand here, and Peter, perhaps you can help me out here. The number of children growing up in institutional care in Kenya is said to be very high. What has led to this? You're attached to some factors. What are these factors that seem to be fitting to these numbers?
The push factors that get children into institutions. Number 1, poverty has been cited as a key reason. And it is also said that poverty should never be a reason to separate a child from their family. But secondly, also you find that many families are struggling to educate their children. They're struggling to feed their children. So you find the poverty piece really has quite a huge, is a huge reason for this. But then think of it, let me use a magnet as an analogy. You have a magnet that draws things to itself, you know. And so sometimes these facilities end up being like a magnet when they are in community. You find that relatives of children find it so easy to default, by default take children to these places because they know they'll be fed, they know they'll be clothed, they know that they'll be taken to school, they know that they will get sponsorships, etc. And so other than poverty, you find that things like abandonment of children. Hospitals like Kenyatta have children that are abandoned by mummies every day. They walk out of the newborn unit leaving the babies there. That's another reason these children end up. You also find orphanhood has been cited equally as a key driver of children into institutions. But other than that, I also find it poverty not only is a poverty that is material poverty, but also the poverty of the mind, and thinking that that is the only way out for families. And so the factors are many, but poverty has been cited as the key one. But you find that in a family such as mine, it was a mind poverty, where no one told them that it was possible to care for the 6 of us within the family. And because they did not know, ignorance allowed that these children ended up in this kind of settings.
I hear you.
Yes.
Boniface, do you think the pandemic has fueled these numbers, considering, I mean, it hit all of us one way or another, and a lot of loss has been attributed to the same?
Yes, the pandemic has contributed to the high numbers of orphans in the country in a way. But at the same time, you remember that at a certain point during the pandemic, the government issued a directive, somehow instructing the children who are in institutions to be reintegrated back to their families. Yes. Therefore, we saw a drastic drop in the number of children who are in the institutions. It implies that most of the children who are in institutions have their families. Either they have their biological parents alive or they have relatives that some work can be done around these families to strengthen them, to ensure that these children can remain within the families. Unfortunately, over time, we've seen, for instance, when schools opened up, we've seen these numbers again rising in the institutions. We've seen children coming back to the institutions. It implies also people are also using education as a factor to have children in institutions. Instead also of looking at it from a point of view that children can be assisted to access education when they are within their families. They don't need to come to an institution or children in a home, for instance, for them to access education.
Okay,
yes.
So you represent the Tree of Life. How has this institution met the needs as you speak?
As we speak, I can say that over the years, we've been able not only to address issues of access to education in terms of infrastructural support to different schools in the country, but also the need for health, because we realize that education and health are key factors that are somehow affecting the family framework. However, in the last 3 years, we've been piloting foster care in Nairobi County and in Nakuru. In Nairobi, we've been in Kasarani and in Embakasi, while in Nakuru, we've been in Gilgil and in Nakuru West, whereby the main objective first was to strengthen the government system. The government system implies we have area advisory councils that were sensitized about alternative care. As a result, they were able to constitute alternative care committees. Now, alternative care committees, it's important for you to know that these are like the gatekeepers at the community level, because they are composed of the sub-county children officer and the key stakeholders in the child space, in child protection within the community. So it was important that they be constituted, trained, so they eventually become the advocates of alternative care within the community. Thanks to this approach, they were able to organize, create awareness within churches, within the chief barazas, in meetings of Nyumba Kumi, within meetings of women groups within the community. And thanks to all these efforts done by the alternative care committees, they were able to elicit interest within the community. We have very many families that came on board and showed the interest of wanting to become foster parents. They made applications. They were taken through individualized training. And as we speak, we have more than 70 children that were placed in kinship and foster care in these target areas. So for us, we're looking at like, this was a pilot. If it was possible to do in these 4 sub-counties, imagine if we were able to do it in the entire Nairobi County, if we did it in the entire Nakuru, and then scale it up to the entire country. I believe very many children will right now be enjoying the opportunity to be within family setups.
All right. We take a short break here on Your World. As you've learned today, alternative care is something that is very beneficial to all children. And this is something that is actually being drummed up to ensure that we safeguard the rights of our children and their welfare. Well, when we come back, we hear more about the same, and of course from Gladys, who everyone seems to be loving and saying that she has a big heart and God bless her heart. We'll be back. Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Today, the conversation, foster care in Kenya. Boniface Bulume, Alternative Family Care and Child Protection Manager at the Tree of Life Kenya. Joining me in studio, Peter Kamau, Executive Director, Child and Family Focus, and of course, Gladys Wanjikonjeri, who is a foster mom. Thank you all for being part of this so important conversation and very mind-opening, to say the least. Now, fostering calls for opening your home, literally, to quote-unquote strangers. Yes. Okay? And you've told us your story with the 3 girls that have been an addition to your own home. How has that experience been, especially considering, as Boniface was saying, every child comes with baggage?
Yeah. It hasn't been smooth, because the kids that you open up your home to are not, maybe at times are not brought up in an environment like yours was. Like the ones that I took in are kids who are brought up in the slum. So their mentality, their mindset is that of the slum. Their way of doing things is that of the slum. Even chewing food, they chew in a funny way. How they do things, they do them funny. How they use the bathroom, you can get annoyed and impatient. Literally how they do everything, they can easily get you pissed off if you didn't get into it because you love the kids. But I want to say that it's a fulfilling journey. If one can just open up and embrace these kids and be ready to work with them step by step, each step at a time, because they need a lot of patience, they need a lot of training, they need somebody who can be able to show them, okay, this is how I was used to doing things. So how do you want me to do them? Like now, the 3 girls that came to my home, this big one who was the mom to the 2 was literally a mom. She would cook for them, she would wash clothes for them, clean the house. And so when they came to my house, this big one, and she was always holding the small one, either at her back or holding her, to a point whereby even if they're sitting on a couch, this one is sitting alone, the second born, the first born is sitting and holding the small one. She can't let the small one sit on her own because she's a mother used to holding this one. So number 1, you have to train her. When you are on a couch, everybody sits on their own. So you have to stop depending on this one and sit on your own. It's not easy. This one, you tell her to sit on her own, she starts crying. Yeah. She's used to clinging to this one. It's small things like even going to the bathroom. I go to the bathroom and they come and stand outside the bathroom door and wait for me to finish and come out, because these are kids who are used to, they have lived a life of being abandoned. That is what the counselor told me when I took this big one for the counseling. Because they are always very, they are holding on to me so much. And when you go to the bathroom, they are waiting for, they can't go anywhere, they're just there at the door. And when you come out, they hold your clothes, they hold your hands, and they're all over you. Because now they need you to give them assurance that you are always going to be there for them. When I am going out, it used to be the hardest time for them, because they are not sure. Mom, when you go, are you going to come back? Or will it be a case of my mom went and never came back? Yeah. So you have to walk this journey with them. This big one who was the mother, you have to let her know she's not now supposed to be there being the one responsible for washing clothes, washing utensils, and the house chores. I remember the toughest time was to keep chasing her outside to go and play, because her childhood was ripped, was stolen. And this girl would go, play for 2 minutes and come back. Mommy, can I wash clothes? Mommy, can I sweep? And then you tell her, I told you to go and play. Because now she's in a different world. What is this world that she's being told you are not supposed to work, go and play? There's somebody to do the house chores. So it is to walk the journey with this small girl to restore her childhood, which was stolen.
Tell me this, the first one you said was sexually molested.
Yes.
How has that journey been?
It has not been easy, because we had to take the girl for counseling.
Yeah.
And for her it was even very bad, because the father was actually penetrating the girl from front and back. So she was damaged both sides. She had a bad backaches. but we have taken her to the hospital, and we have taken her for counseling. We have also done a lot of talking to her, and that effect has got both sides. It is affecting her. Somehow she used to think it's normal because she's a child. The person who did that to her, remember, is a parent. As a parent, you are an authority figure over a child. So whatever you tell your child, they believe it's right. If you tell them drink this water, they know water is good. If you tell them don't drink this water, it is bad, they know it is bad. So in this case, it is the father who introduced the small girl to sex. So now it is walking the journey with this girl, letting her know what daddy did was wrong. Because nobody should touch your private parts, nobody should have sex with you. So you have to undo that mentality, which in her mind, according to the counselor said, we have to explain to her why it is bad, yet it's my dad who showed me, who showed it to me. It was so bad because the girl was even used to the kisses. And she would kiss very nicely. Sometimes when out of your sight, you'd find her kissing her sisters. And then now you tell her, no, I don't want you to kiss mouth to mouth. It's wrong. When you want to kiss your sisters, kiss the cheek or the forehead. But because this thing is in her and you're walking the journey with her to come out of it, now she would again hide, cover the, when she wants to kiss the sisters. Remember, her system is used to kissing.
And that's what love looks like.
And that's what love looks like. So when she's kissing her sisters, she loves them. So she would at times cover herself with something and kiss the sisters inside there. So you have to walk the journey with them until now you make them understand what is the, how do you kiss if it's your sister? And what is, you know, it's difficult and complicated.
In short, teaching them intimacy all over again and the boundaries of the same. Now, tell me, Peter, I mean, that sounds quite intense and complicated, and as every child will be taken to this family and they're all trying to, you know, unpack baggage. What normally is the first thing you consider, and how do you do follow-up to ensure that such cases are catered for? Because this child placement doesn't stop when they get to the home. It actually starts when they now start experiencing the home.
Thank you very much. You find that these children are assigned caseworkers or social workers, and follow-up and monitoring is very important. It's very important to journey alongside foster and adoptive parents and avail the requisite support, connect them with peers who can talk to them about the experience, etc. And so the placement is not the end, but then it's a journey you commence. And we call upon, you know, the school system, the health system, the church system. All of them are surrounding this child, the ecological model of childcare, whereby the child is at the center, but you find there are lots of layers of support mechanisms. And so we always emphasize that childcare is everyone's business, and that it should not be done in isolation just with the foster mother, but that the neighbors, the friends of mama here, the church, and all others surround them. But of course, it's very important that follow-up is done to avoid regression, as well as further damage to the child. Yes.
Okay, and perhaps we can now even quote Article 25 of the Convention on Children's Rights, as we are saying this was ratified, and it actually is also the basis of the World Children's Day periodic review of placement. Boniface, is this something that you're also putting in place and is integral in the projects that you're involved in?
This is integral to the process in the projects that we are doing, just as Peter has put it, especially after placement of a child in a family setup. The first few months, the follow-ups is frequent so that you're very supportive, get to understand how the child is adjusting within the family setup. Then eventually, the visits become quarterly, simply because after some time, you need to give the family some space. Initially, you work with them very closely, but at the same time, in that process of working with them closely, you are able to pinpoint some of the challenges that the family might be going through here and there. That's why we are also considering the fact that when we are talking about training the family, training is not only before placement, but even during that process of placement, when the parents are with the child, so that when the parent is going through certain challenges, for instance, even psychological issues that are affecting the family, the parent, or things that the parent is seeing in the child, and he or she is not able to understand, then the caseworker that Peter is talking about comes in handy to really not only assist, and if whatever is being experienced is beyond the caseworker, then a specialized training is also recommended to be able to assist the parent to know how to deal with these circumstances. Yes.
What if there is a case where both child or the foster parent have come to the conclusion that this is not the best placement for either of them? What happens?
For sure, when you are talking about monitoring and review, all this is normally guided by two principles on whether it is the principle of necessity. First, it implies that whether this child, in the first place, it was necessary to separate this child from the previous care option that the child was in, or from the family of origin where the child was. Because some children are removed from their families because then the family becomes a toxic environment for the child. The other principle is about suitability, whether the family, the foster family, is adequately responding to the needs of this child. So in this case, if we realize that for both the family and the child, things are not working out, then it's important, because even sometimes we might find there are some safeguarding issues, whereby maybe there's a borderline on issues even of abuse in one way or exploitation. So the child has to be removed from that space because it is no longer safe as we explore other alternative care options. However, that's why the matching process becomes key. When you are matching a child with the eventual family, that process has to be very thorough, ensuring that you are the assessment was done very well on the needs of the child vis-a-vis the capacity of the family to respond to those needs. Because the risk is high when you have multiple placement, that you're placing this child in this family, afterwards you're removing this child, placing in another family. You can imagine if you had sellotape that is on your skin, and you, every now and again someone is putting and then removing. So problems of attachment eventually emerge. Because as a child I become attached to this adult, and then things are not working out, I have to be placed in another family, again I have to get attached. So we try to avoid that. Yeah.
All right. Now, Peter, somebody here, Daniel to be specific, is saying, I'm very encouraged by what I've heard from Peter, considering as much as the outcome of those who are in the institution is not the best, he turned out, or sounds like he turned out quite well. Tell me this, 6 of you were in a home. How long were you there for?
For me, because I was the youngest, I was in institutional care from the time I lost my mom, which was like from six weeks all the way to age 18. And for many children's homes, some of them even will extend the time that you're there, depending on whether you're stable, etc. But of course, there are others who will disengage you or get you out of there immediately you clock 18, because they say that bed is needed for the abandoned baby that will be coming tomorrow. And so it differs from children's home to children's home. But then back to the outcomes, as Boniface alluded earlier, the outcomes are sad, that 1 in 5 become homeless. 1 in 3 ends up involved in prostitution. 1 in 10 ends up suicidal. And for our family specifically, my eldest brother, he committed suicide in the year 2007. It tells you that there's something regarding this kind of care that needs to be relooked, because the basics of having a consistent, caring adult that you can talk to, that you can express your feelings and problems and talk to them about child bullying in school, etc. You find a lot of these things are missing. And so I read somewhere that every child needs at least one caring adult that is joyfully mad about them, mad in a good way. You know what I mean? So to mitigate these outcomes, it's very important that we rethink the way we do things. But then I keep insisting, I'm where I am because of a children's home. Sadly, for my brother, it turned out different. For another brother, he's been in and out of the criminal justice system. So it's helpful to have a look at the entire spectrum and think of how we can change the way we care, because the systemic issues require systemic solutions.
I hear you. Tell me about integration. So you're 18 and you're leaving the institution. Is there any sort of integration into now the adult life, so to speak?
Good question. A lot of times you are not well prepared for that. And sometimes a lot of social workers can be brutal and they will just get you, oh, tomorrow you're going back to your uncle or you're going to your grandfather. And imagine a situation whereby you have not gotten a relationship with that relative, and then you're literally abandoned in their care, and they're supposed to take care of you with all the baggage you bring. So it is a challenge, and that is why a lot of girls will end up in early marriages, because the uncle or the relative cannot cope, and the fact that the child was separated from their care when they were really young, it means there was a tie that was broken. There was a bond that was broken. So preparation for aftercare is something that is supposed to happen theoretically, but unfortunately it doesn't in many, many cases of young people. And so going out into the society, you suffer adjustmental challenges. Things like even cooking are not something we take for granted. Budgeting, commuting, because you're too used to being in this institution or the big walls, and you rarely interact with the outside world. And so when you get out without adequate preparation, you can imagine what the effect of that is.
Okay, Peter, what worked for you?
What worked for me, interestingly, was a caring adult that listened to me and gave me an opportunity. And an opportunity not many get, because I had received marching orders to stay away after high school and not get back to the children's home because, yeah, my time had come. But I returned to take back my high school books that I used for that class, and I found administration had changed. And I must give credit to Sheila, the deputy governor today at the Central Bank. She was the chief admin at the children's home at the time. And she cared to listen to me. She called me for a conversation. It was very rare to have a person that actually gives you time to listen to you, because we were too used to receiving orders and rarely got to have a chance to voice our opinions or our preferences, etc. And so Sheila listened to me, and after that she asked me what I wanted, and I told her, truth be told, I would prefer another place and not staying in the rural areas looking after cattle. I've not gotten accustomed to that kind of life. And so she asked me, would you like to actually get a job that earns you a pay as you await your results for high school? And I was like, wow, that would be brilliant. And she connected me to her friend who ran a gas station near the village market. And I tell you, working as a gas station attendant was my first job. Humble beginnings, but I love the experience and the things I learned in that setting. I learned money management, I learned commute, I learned customer relations, I learned how to interact with people. And to me, those values and lessons have stuck to date. And so when you ask what exactly caused me to be different, and I am an exception, not the norm, is because I had a listening ear of an adult, as well as an opportunity. It can be the life changer for many.
I hear you. Yeah. And let's just be clear here that that is the voice of a child now who is grown, who is speaking on the need of a child. So I hope we are paying attention. So even as we bring this conversation to a close, Gladys, you are walking this journey, a lot still on this path as you walk with these three girls. What would you like to encourage others who perhaps are thinking of doing the same? Today they know how they can go about it, but then again, as you said, it takes the heart to ensure that you sustain it.
Yeah, I would encourage many to go out for foster parenting, because as you've heard from Peter, you give hope to a hopeless child. You give life, a brand new life to this child. So I would encourage many, it's not complicated. The government is there to support. We have got the government offices ready to help you with the processing of the papers and all that. Right now, as we are speaking, I have the fostering certificate, I have the birth certificates for the girls. So it is not complicated. It all takes love, and I would encourage many to go out and help these kids. My mentor is Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa said, if you cannot feed 100, feed one. So if you're able to just touch one life, don't mind about the many numbers. Don't mind about many who are homeless, who need foster care. Mind about that one and go change that one. And if I may mention just a verse from the Bible, Proverbs 11:25, it says, he who refreshes others will themselves be refreshed. There is God in heaven who watches you as you go out and refresh others. As you go out and give hope to this child, as you go out and give love to this child, there's a God in heaven who watches and who will come and refresh your own life. So it's possible. And it's a very fulfilling journey. I love those girls. If anybody took them away from me, it would be the saddest moment of my life, because it's so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling. I love it.
Bless your soul, Gladys. Bless your soul. Now, for purposes of protecting the right and welfare of children in light of the upcoming World Children Day tomorrow, Boniface, are there laws, policies to ensure these family-based care alternatives we talk about today are actually catered for?
I can say currently we are operating under the Children's Act 2001 that to some extent cater for issues alternative care. However, as actors in the sector, there is the Children's Bill that is currently in Parliament. Therefore, we'll really appeal to our legislators to fast track it, because recently we had public participation. Different people gave their inputs. We are really looking forward to when this bill will become law. This will truly cement all these efforts that are being put by different actors, and it will really be a serious game changer for many children in the country. Two, we want to applaud the efforts being put by the NCCS and the Directorate of Children's Services, because as we speak, we have a care reform strategy that is being disseminated in different parts of the country. Care reform strategy has been developed. We have documents, supporting documents for its implementation that were also developed, and we believe it's only a matter of time that soon we'll be seeing a lot of implementation of what we've been talking about in different parts of the country. More, I want to maybe appeal to us who are in the civil society, simply because we are the ones who are implementing. So unless there is buy-in, unless we have a conversion within ourselves to really see that despite all our good intentions, there is the downside of what we've been doing so far. And if you truly want to see different results, it is just obvious that we should try to change something to be able to get better results. And as people who are learning from experience, I think it will be important that we all embrace this shift from institutionalized kind of care to family-based care, because through it we'll be able to reach very many children. Today, if you walk out here, you'll meet very many children in the streets. I don't think, even if we say now we go on with the institutions can be able to absorb all of them. But I'm sure if we all embrace family-based care, we have as many families out here that if we all decide, if we follow the appeal that Gladys is giving us today, all these children can easily have an opportunity to live within a family.
Okay,
so
Peter,
it's a challenge to us.
All right.
Yes.
Now, Peter, I'm told I need to end this, and even as we are saying, it's a systemic issue. We also need buy-in, because these families we talk about are people who need to open their homes and, as Gladys said, their hearts. Speak to this.
I want to encourage Kenyans not to be afraid of taking in these children. They are from hard places, but they are malleable. They are redeemable. Hope is not lost for those children that are in the system, as well as those that are already out in the family setting that are requiring to be maintained and safeguarded. So my encouragement to Kenyans is do not hold back. Move forward, seek information, but give a child a chance. And it's not a bad case at all, because there is hope and they're malleable. And I have seen so many adoptive as well as foster parents that are doing amazing, and it's life-changing for these children. So Kenyans of goodwill, please open up your homes, seek information, and consider this, because it is life-changing and it's not about you. God sets the lonely in families. Why don't you join God in that work?
Oh, yes. Amen to that.
And maybe to add to what my colleagues have said, I want to say that now that we are going to the election period, foster parenting is one tool we can use to fight tribalism. Because like the kids I am fostering, the 3 of them, they are not from my tribe. So when you embrace other tribes and bring them into your house, you cease to become tribal and you become Kenyan. You become a Kenyan because you have other tribes in your house. So how do you fight that tribe? So foster parenting is a very important tool even as we go to the election period to help us fight tribalism. And also maybe I would give a very humble request to our government, because maybe what Boniface explained, what would push away these people outside there from doing the foster parenting is maybe the support from the government. If the government can have a kitty to support the well-wishers who are willing to do foster parenting. It would welcome many, and it would solve the problem that Boniface has just spoken, because many are willing but are not maybe financially able to take in these kids. So I thought maybe I should mention that. Thank you for the extra minute.
Karibu sana. Yes, and this definitely learning points, and it's something that we need to all look into and see how we can play a part in it. Gentlemen and lady, thank you for your time. Gladys Wanjiko Njeri, foster mother, bless your soul.
Amen.
Peter Kamau, Executive Director, Child in Family Focus, and of course Boniface Buluma, who is an alternative family care and child protection manager at the Tree of Life, Kenya. Well, time now to take a short break here on Your World. When we come back, a conversation on logistics and why the African region could soon be boasting of having its own Amazon. Stay with us.